We are getting a look for the very first time inside the house on King Road as crime scene photos are released. And that full security video from the house next door shows the eerie moments leading up to the murders of 4 University of Idaho college students. I go through all of it. Welcome to Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. It's been a little more than 2 weeks now since Bryan Kohberger was shipped off to a maximum security prison to start serving his 4 consecutive life sentences for the murders of Maddie Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. And now we are getting a look at just a little bit of the massive amount of evidence still to be released by the Moscow Police Department. Crime scene photos from 1122 King Road have been released to a Boise TV station, KTVB. Law&Crime has actually requested a long list of items from Moscow PD and other agencies and has not yet received a response, but Idaho residents, they get a quicker response to these records requests. KTVB shared these photos that they received, and they show areas inside the home, which are blurred and redacted. There are also images of the sliding glass door that Bryan Kohberger entered the morning of November 13th, 2022, intent on carrying out murder. The photos also show handprints on the back window of the home, but we don't know who those belong to. Now, the Today Show also shared some of these photos from KTVB. One showed Maddie's boots on the ground. You can also see red Solo cups. The photos show a typical college house that one man destroyed, turning it into a horrific crime scene. For what reason? We still don't know, and whatever reason he gave would never make sense to any of us. The release of the photos came after this photo of Bryan Kohberger became public. It shows him shortly after his arrest on December 30th, 2022. Pennsylvania State Police raided his parents' home in Pennsylvania. Kohberger was wearing all black that morning. And now the entire video from the house next door to 1122 King Road has been released. The video from 1112 King Road was recorded from this camera. The house is right next door to where Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan were murdered. At 3:30 a.m., the white Hyundai Elantra pulls onto King Road for the very first time and then pulls out a couple of minutes later. Here's a clip from a video put together by the Idaho Statesman. The Idaho Statesman video editors speed up the video by 15 times to show the next time that Kohberger pulls onto King Road at 3:38 a.m. and then leaves King Road at 3:40 a.m. Again, this video is speeded up by 15 times, and at 3:46 a.m., the DoorDash driver attempting to deliver food to Xana pulls onto King Road. At 3:51 a.m., the DoorDash driver can be seen walking along the street. In her statement to police, she said she had trouble finding the address. She even used a flashlight to try to find the numbers on the house. She turns around at one point, and you can see her walking back toward 1122 King Road, her flashlight in hand. Then at 3:56 a.m., the white Elantra turns onto King Road again and leaves at 3:58 a.m. You saw the DoorDash driver left at 4 a.m. Detectives said in a report that Kohberger pulled in behind that driver and pulled out, and they don't believe that she ever saw him. Then at 4:04 a.m., the white Elantra pulls onto King Road again and makes a strange three-point turn. Hey, I want to tell you about a free app that I've tried. It's called Upside, and it will give you cash back on things you use every day, like gas, groceries, and takeout. You can transfer the cash you get back straight into your bank account. That's what's great about it. When I pump gas or I go to Dunkin' for a drink, I use Upside. I've even used it when I order pizza. Here's how it works. Download Upside, claim an offer, and pay as usual using a debit or credit card. Follow the steps and get paid. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan that QR code on your screen and use our promo code CrimeFix to get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's promo code CrimeFix for an extra 25 cents back on your first gallon of gas. This time frame marks the beginning of the end of Maddie, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan's lives at the hands of Bryan Kohberger. Again, for no reason at all. Bryan Kohberger, dressed in all black, carrying a K-bar knife, sneaked into the house on King Road through the sliding glass door. The camera that captured these images also captured sounds believed to have come from Xana's bedroom. The loud thud could have been Xana falling to the ground. Police reports reveal that Xana fought for her life. She had more than 50 stab wounds, many to her arms, hands, and face. She tried to fight off Bryan Kohberger. At 4:20, the coward flees the crime scene. We now know definitively that that white car that nearly lost control speeding away from the crime scene was driven by Bryan Kohberger. For more than 2 years, he denied it was him through his lawyers. But then last month, a sudden change of heart.
With respect to count 1, burglary, felony, how do you plead, Mr. Kohberger, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Prosecutors had planned to use this 3D model of the house on King Road to show jurors the strange layout of the house. The FBI actually built the model. The roof came off, and a witness like Dylan Mortensen would have likely used it to show jurors where her bedroom was located in relation to the others and the kitchen. But now there's no need for the model house.
As to count 2, murder in the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Maddie Mogen, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 3, as it relates to murder in the first degree for the murder of Kaylee Goncalves, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 4, the first-degree murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 5, the first-degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Kohberger has finally admitted to killing the students in cold blood.
You've heard the plea agreement that I talked about today. Do you agree with that plea agreement?
Yes.
And do you understand the nature of the charges that you've been charged with that I understand you're going to plead guilty today to?
Yes.
As as I indicated, I'm not bound by the plea agreement, but the plea agreement is for the maximum on each count. Do you understand that I'm not bound by the plea agreement?
Yes.
Has anyone promised you that I would be lenient or easy on you if you pled guilty?
No.
Has anyone threatened you or anyone close to you to get you to plead guilty?
No.
Has anyone, other than the state's agreements with respect to the plea agreement, has anyone promised you anything in exchange for your plea agreement?
No.
Has anyone told you to be untruthful in answering my questions today?
No.
Has anyone offered you a reward of any kind other than the plea agreement in order to get you to plead guilty today?
No.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
Before being taken to prison, families of the victims told Kohberger exactly what they thought of him.
I won't stand here and give you what you want. I won't offer you tears. I won't offer you trembling. Disappointments like you thrive on pain, on fear, and on the illusion of power. And I won't feed your beast. Instead, I will call you what you are: sociopath, psychopath, murderer. I will ask the questions that reverberate violently in my own head, so loudly that I can't think straight most any day. Some of these might be familiar, so sit up straight when I talk to you. How was your life right before you murdered my sisters? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your apartment? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this time. Why did you choose my sisters? Before making your move, did you approach my sisters? Detail what you were thinking and feeling. Before leaving their home, is there anything else you did? How does it feel to know the only thing you failed more miserably at than being a murderer is trying to be a rapper? Did you recently start shaving or manually pulling out your eyebrows? Why November 13th? Did you truly think your Amazon purchase was untraceable because you used a gift card? How do you find it enjoyable to stargaze with such a severe case of visual snow? Where is the murder weapon, the clothes you wore that night? What did you bring into the house with you? What was the second weapon you used on Kaylee? What were Kaylee's last words? Please describe in detail the level of anxiety you must have felt when you heard the Bearcat pull up to your family home on December 30th, 2022. Which do you regret more? Returning to the crime scene 5 hours later, or never, ever going back to Moscow, not even once, after stalking them there for months? If you were really smart, do you think you'd be here right now? What's it like needing this much attention just to feel real? You're terrified of being ordinary, aren't you? Do you feel anything at all? Or are you exactly what you always feared? Nothing.
I want to bring in Mark Weaver to talk about this new evidence being released. You know, Mark, you've covered a lot of cases. You've dealt with public records, battles, requests. Your first reaction to this video, I know Dateline published part of this video back in May. Now we have the Idaho statesman getting a hold of this and publishing a longer version of it. Your thoughts as a death penalty prosecutor on watching this video and watching the white Elantra. Bryan Kohberger now admits it was me, just circling that crime scene, circling and circling. It's like a vulture circling around prey.
That's a good analogy. I have prosecuted murder cases, and I've worked on public records cases, and I've also been the one who has to redact records that get released to the press. So this is an interesting perspective for me to talk about. There's a sinister feeling to watching this. We know what's about to happen, and it does feel like a vulture circling a prey or a shark circling a victim. And, obviously it's late at night. It just makes it feel creepier. And then there was the release of the crime scene photos that some of which were blurred, but we have a real sense of what it looked like outside as he was building up the nerve to commit this crime that he probably had been fantasizing about in his head for days, weeks, or months, and then what it looked like inside to be actually there and know that that's what the crime scene looked like to him, and the last images of his victims.
It's just horrifying. 200 of these crime scene photos were released to KTVB TV in Boise. The Idaho news outlets are getting these records faster because of the public records laws in Idaho. Idaho residents get a response more quickly within 3 working days. Out-of-state residents, 21 working days, just to put that out there. It's so sad, though. I mean, they didn't publish all of the crime scene photos because they're very graphic, even in their redacted nature. But you really get a sense of these were kids in a college house who went to bed. We already knew these things, but you're seeing it. They went to bed and never woke up because somebody went into their house and stole their lives. I mean, it's really hitting you in the gut how horrific and disgusting this is.
Yeah, we send our kids off to college knowing that this is their last chance to learn about life before they have to start their adult career and their life. And so if you were casting a movie and you had to create a set for what a college house might look like, you take the red cups and put them on the ground. You take cases of beer and put them down on the ground, and you'd have stuff all messy. This is exactly what it looked like. So it's we all have been in houses like this, and that's what some people live like. Good on them. That's what they're supposed to do when they're kids. But it is a reminder that this innocence was stolen by this personification of evil, circling, fantasizing, slipping in, and then committing these heinous murders.
Yeah, absolutely heinous. I mean, it's just beyond belief. Could you tell me, Mark, let's go back to that video. You look at this video and they weren't able to definitively identify the vehicle from that portion of the video. They used other pieces of video to identify the vehicle, but it still establishes a clear timeline in the crime. How valuable is that piece of video?
When you're building a complex case, when you don't have a confession, when you don't have solid DNA evidence, we had some DNA evidence here, but we don't have just absolutely solid DNA evidence. Mm-hmm. Jurors want to see that the prosecution has done their homework. So when I prosecute cases, I always use PowerPoint. I always put visuals up. Sometimes I'll do a timeline. Sometimes I'll connect the dots. It shows a professional prosecution. It gives jurors who might have some reasonable doubt in the back of their head a way to quell that reasonable doubt and say, you know what, this is a professionally prepared case. They have this touch DNA on the sheath of the knife. They have all these other pieces of the puzzle, but the timeline is the one that brings all the individual pieces together.
The timeline is very important here because it goes up, it kind of lines up with the surviving roommate DM and her story. And then you have her text messages. So it is a circumstantial case, or at least it was a circumstantial case. But I think that video is very important because you take the DoorDash driver that you can see in it, when she drops off the food, and you couple that with Dylan's testimony, her account of what happened, and her cell phone records, and you have a very clear picture, a narrative of what happened in that house.
Yeah, every case I prosecute now, we're using digital evidence. There's more doorbell cameras, there's more security cameras, there's texts, there's geolocation. And when the DoorDash driver took that photo, we have the metadata from her photo, so know exactly when she dropped the food off. And jurors are coming to expect this. It makes you wonder how cases like this were solved and proved 75 years ago. Mm-hmm. There were murders, there were heinous knife murders of young people 75 years ago, and those prosecutors didn't have the evidence we have now. And juries come to expect that. And it used to be called the CSI effect. Jurors want to have all the science to prove things. Sometimes in my prosecutions, I don't have scientific data. I just have good old-fashioned eyewitness data and other things. And we have to explain to the jurors, sometimes we have science, sometimes we don't. In this case, we had some pretty good science.
I want to go back to what you brought up before about the DNA, how they had the DNA on the snap of the knife sheath. But that was the only DNA they had of Bryan Kohberger in that house. It's a powerful piece of evidence when you couple it with everything else. But at the same time, you never know how something is going to be attacked at trial and how it's going to unfold at trial and how a juror or jurors are going to perceive that once it comes out on the stand. Do you think, the prosecution could have been a little nervous about all of this? Especially with no connection to the victims. They said that they talked about everything they didn't have in this case when accepting this plea. Do you think they were a little nervous and that's why they were so quick, boom, to accept that plea and say, sign on the dotted line, we'll take it, without maybe saying, you know what, Ann Taylor, we're going to need him to sit down and answer a few questions, and then we'll consider striking the death penalty?
That's a good theory. I think 23, 24 years ago when I tried my first jury trial, I was very confident in my evidence. And young prosecutors who are starting out are very confident in their evidence. The more jury trials you prosecute, the more you realize that jurors are like everybody else. Some of them are odd. Some of them are hard to persuade. Some of them don't understand science. Maybe they didn't take chemistry in high school or college. Some of them reject modern notions of science. And all you need is one juror. Just one juror could either hang the jury, meaning you'd have to start the trial all over again months later, or one juror on the death penalty phase to say, yeah, he did it, but I don't really like the evidence. I'm not going to vote for the death penalty. And then we're back to life in prison. So it's hard to get a death penalty prosecution when you don't have a confession or rock solid DNA evidence. The kind of DNA evidence they found is a newer process that we've only been using in the last few years. And you just never know if there's not one juror who's in their mind saying, nah, I don't think this is right. There's something missing here in the science.
Bill Thompson had said, during the press conference, he kind of echoed what Judge Hippler said at the sentencing, that how could we know what Bryan Kohberger would say would be true, even if we did talk to him? He was ready to plead guilty. He was ready to say, I did it. So, I look at it as a lot of times these killers, they don't tell you the whole truth, but they tell you enough to get a clear picture. And they give you something that really seals it and corroborates everything and ties it together. Do you think that would have been worth it to still sit down with him and have him answer a few questions, even if you thought maybe he'd be lying about some of it?
Yeah, I think so. You and I have been on the air, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 times on this case over the last few years. And in one of my previous interviews with you, I did not criticize the prosecutor for agreeing to this deal for the reasons I've just explained, that there's all these ways it could wind up going the wrong way. But I am critical of the prosecutor for not getting a proffer, for not requiring as part of this deal that this killer explain more about what happened. It would give, not full closure, some small amount of closure to the victims' families. I suspect he may offer to do this somewhere down the road, either for money or clemency or fame. We saw this with Ted Bundy, there's some indication that perhaps Kohberger, was interested in the Ted Bundy case. And Ted Bundy completely denied he killed 30, 40, 50 young women. We're not sure the total number. Completely denied it all throughout all of his trials. And then just days before he was to be executed, he brought in a news crew, and he brought in people who would ask him questions. And he said, I'll tell you all of it, in the hopes that maybe the governor would commute his sentence to life in prison. So he was dealing right till the end. In that case, Bundy was trying to deal away the death penalty. But he didn't say a word until it became in his interest to say something. And then he gave significant details. And in fact, told authorities about some murders that they didn't realize that Bundy had done.
Yeah, I feel that Bryan Kohberger was allowed to walk into prison with currency, and that currency was his story.
Yes, that's right. And he has it now. And as I said, I do suspect at some point, because he's creepy and devious and smart, you're not a PhD student without being smart, creepy and devious and smart, he will try to spend that currency somewhere down the road.
Yeah. I agree with you 110%. Any final thoughts on this new batch of evidence coming out? I mean, there's still more to come. It's dribbling out bit by bit. But any final thoughts on the video and the crime scene photos?
Yeah, I watch it, and part of my brain is the prosecutor part, analyzing it. The other part is the father, and trying to imagine these families looking at these images, knowing that their children are behind the blurs, and that the blood spatters belong to their children. And so I always want to try to remember the human side of this, and our need to pray for these families and what they're going through. What a horrible thing that this man caused in the lives of these four families and countless friends. And so it's I respect the way Law&Crime has covered this case, and I think you've done it in a smart and tactful way, but we can't ignore the human element.
Yeah, not at all. It's horrific. And these families, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they get up every day. And my thoughts and prayers are with them. Mark Weaver, thank you so much.
Thank you, Angenette.
As I mentioned earlier, Bryan Kohberger is serving his time in Idaho's maximum security institution. He's in J Block. That's long-term restrictive housing. And he spends 23 hours a day in a cell and is allowed out 1 hour per day. And he gets to shower every other day. That's his life now. And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.